Salutation and thank you very much for the wonderful talk, Ajahn. My question is how to love oneself, truly love oneself. Many a time we do lots of things, but sometimes even out of the whole project, even if we do a small mistake, we just end up blaming ourselves, and instead of thanking what is there and being grateful, we focus on what is not there, and that eats up lots of things, and it stays for quite a long. So I really want to know you when you said about loving yourself. So I want to know from your experiences that I can take. Thank you, Ajahn.
So, yes, people who have high standards and who want to do a good job, when we make mistakes, we can beat ourselves up. And so I think, in my experience, I mean, be training as a monk in a strict monastery with very high standards meant that you were often not quite good enough. You're often kind of failing a little bit from the high standard and making mistakes, and it's hard. It's the thing about, one has to take on the metta practice as in a disciplined way. So we need to be able to establish that experience of goodwill, kind of an unconditional love in our own hearts. Because what happens is when we develop the capacity to hold that in the heart, it sensitizes the mind to know when something else is coming in. So it's like if we have a self-aversion habit or a self-flagellation, beating ourselves up, whipping ourselves, if we have that habit, it can be quite deep. And once it's in the mind, as you're explaining, it can last for some time. So we train ourselves in holding the antidote, the opposite of that experience, loving acceptance, goodwill. And what happens is when you get adept at being able to establish that in the mind, you begin to be able to pick it up. It's like replacement by opposites. You recognize that there is ill will aimed inwards. Pali, Bhayapada, it's one of the hindrances. It's a problem when it's aimed outwards, and it's a problem when it's aimed inwards as well. So it's not a wholesome thing. One of the hindrances, we recognize it. And so the samatha practice of metta is the antidote. And we hold the loving kindness, and we get skilled at holding the loving kindness in the heart. And in the future, when that painful mind state comes back, so we do it with the breath, right? Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. And when we recognize that the painful mindset has come back, you just go straight to breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. You meet it with an antidote force the moment that it starts manifesting, so that it doesn't get its roots in so deep, and so that it doesn't last so long. But like anything, there's no quick and easy trick. One has to have a disciplined practice so that the metta becomes powerful. It's talking about spiritual powers. Samadhi is one of them. Metta is a type of samadhi as well. It starts as wholesome thoughts, good intentions, goodwill. But when we get skilled at it, it's a type of samadhi. It can be developed at the jhana level. So, but it's for that reason that it's so enormously helpful and such a support to practice, because when we recognize a negative, unskillful mindset coming in, we can pick up a wholesome one. So Ajahn Anan recommended to me, when I was spending my second rainy season retreat there at Wat Marp Chan 24 years ago, he told me to spend the first 5 to 10 minutes doing loving kindness to myself of every meditation sit, every one. And then afterwards, of course, one has to deepen it. One doesn't just do loving kindness for oneself, one has it for one's teachers, one's parents, all beings eventually. But one has to start with oneself, because if you want to be able to have the loving kindness that radiates outwards, you have to have it in your center. You have to have it in your heart. It has to radiate from the center, right? If it was an antenna or a 3G, 4G, 5G tower, it has to have electricity, right? It needs to be something pumping this out. So, but you can feel confident that if you do it every day, it really does become very powerful. And sometimes the negativity is there, the judging, which is too harsh, and there's some ill will and some self-judgments, and you just keep doing that. May I be well, may I be happy. I recognize that here is a sentient being that has suffering. So may I be well, may I be happy. And you just do it until the mind state goes. It's like you have to use the metta to wash that mind state out of the mind. And you can. The more you do it, the more adept you become at it. And also the less power that mind state has to fully infiltrate. And Luang Por Chah uses the analogy of sitting in the seat of the mind and seeing, that's the mindfulness and clear comprehension with some samadhi, and seeing various guests coming in the door and not letting them take the seat. This is one of the things that the metta practice helps us, is to, we have metta in the heart as the foundation. The ill will can't sit down for long. It can't get in that deeply. You see it come in the door and you let it leave. It's like, you know it, you watch it come in and you watch it leave. And you maintain the metta citta as a way of being the one sitting in the chair. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Ajahn.
You're welcome.
So he was wanting to know how we make our mindfulness continuous, and what's the difference between sati and sampajanya. Okay.
So I can just talk from my experience. The way I maintain a good quality of mindfulness is that after I wake up, I get up, I do need to do a session of sitting meditation where I'm being mindful of the breathing before I go on my arms round. And then when I go on my arms round, so it's like when you take your meditation object for a period of time, that's like charging the battery, that's strengthening the quality of the mindfulness, because when we have to attend to daily duties, the mind becomes dissipated, distracted, that's normal. But when we being mindful of one object, the breathing, the mindfulness gets clearer. And so what happens is you can bring this quality of mindfulness to knowing the postures and knowing other sensations. So what I do then is, after the breath meditation, is when I go on arms round, I am mindful of the feelings at the bottom of the foot of the feet. So it's a similar practice, mindfulness of feelings, mindful of the body. And then after my have some fruit in the morning, and then I meditate again. And so I attend some chores, receive some guests, do some work, and in the afternoon I have to do another session. So in my experience, to maintain consistent mindfulness for myself, I need to be doing some sitting every morning, every afternoon, every evening, every day. That's my experience of how, because it's when you come to sit and you notice what are the qualities, what are the hindrances that are beginning to invade the mind, and how much power are they developing. And that's when we apply these spiritual powers, the right mindfulness, the right concentration, and we kind of thin out, clean out the thickness of the hindrances. And once again, there's some clarity, some presence of mind. We make the determination to take that into our activities. So for myself, yeah, I mean, even after 26 years of practice, I still need to practice every morning, every afternoon, every evening to have a good quality of mindfulness that is capable of recognizing wholesome mind states. So the mindfulness and clear comprehension, in my experience, is through being consistent with the meditation, and you're just trying to know the feelings of the breath, but that quality of knowing has this nature. One of the senior Mahateras in England, Ajahn Munindo, calls it truth discerning awareness, mindfulness. So because there is presence of mind, you tend to just notice what mind states are present, what thoughts are present, whether they're wholesome, whether they're neutral, or whether they're unwholesome. So that's a clear comprehension. There's aspects of right view there. Knowing if it's wholesome, knowing if it's unwholesome, knowing if it's unwholesome, knowing if it's a hindrance, knowing if it's a kilesa, or knowing if it's parami, knowing if it's a power. This is the clear comprehension aspect. And once again, it's the consistency of the practice that makes that kind of clarity, unconfusion, lack of confusion possible. So, and I think the walking meditation practice is important, because the walking meditation practice we're doing with our eyes open, it's training ourselves to be to have presence of mind while there's movement and while the eyes are open. This is very helpful for learning to apply mindfulness throughout all our activities and our work throughout the day. So probably at least a session of walking meditation, if possible, would also support the consistent mindfulness and the clear comprehension. So.
Another question from one of the monks, a different monk. He's wanting to know whether faith is all about kind of being positive, or whether, like, if you actually can't do something, like accepting that you're not able to do something, is that an aspect of faith as well?
No, I don't think, I mean, I think it's an aspect of clear comprehension, mindfulness and clear comprehension. So faith can be joyful, and we need to use the joy of faith to support our practice. But when you look at various suttas, looking at the end of the Anatta-lakkhana Sutta and the Adittapariyaya Sutta, the Sutra on Not Self and the Fire Sermon, the last paragraph is extremely pertinent and very central, explains a process which is very common, I think, in the process of enlightenment for beings. It says that, you know, seeing the not self of the khandhas, weariness arises. The viraga, dispassion. So the nibbida, nibbida arises. So we have faith in the Buddha, we have faith in the Dhamma, we have faith in our potential, we have faith in practice, we do the practice. What happens? You start to feel weary. And that's part of the process, because weariness leads to dispassion. It's like, so it's not about being happy. It's not about being a happy self-view. It's about having right view. Being generous, keeping precepts supports well-being. But in the process of developing insight, there is going to be the arising of weariness. And that weariness is important because it sobers up the mind and it stops the mind from flowing out into fantasies about degrees and careers and promotions and relationships and status symbols and assets and all the things that people get obsessed with. And it brings the mind back and the mind turns inwards. And that's when the insight and liberation becomes possible, because as that paragraph develops, it says, weariness arises, leading to dispassion. And through dispassion, the mind is purified and liberated. It's like a couple of sentences. So I find that's very important as Buddhist practitioners to understand that being a Buddhist is not always about being positive and happy. Being a Buddhist is about practicing sincerely and hard enough to see the truth of the way things are. And then there's this kind of parallel experience of I have faith, I have some well-being, and there's a lot of weariness. And that weariness compels us, inspires us to keep practicing, to let go of our attachments so that we can experience unshakable peace beyond suffering. So we have faith in the Buddha, we have faith in our ability, we have faith in the practice, and then we have to have metta to support ourselves in the process, because we understand that our bad habits are deep. We've been doing unskillful things for a long time, and it's going to take time to purify and liberate the mind. So I think it's an aspect of wisdom, knowing what one's ability currently is, but then also one has to be, being a practicing Buddhist is hard. It requires a healthy humility and a healthy confidence at the same time. It requires accepting our limitations and a determination to go beyond them. So it does require some sophistication. And the way we work with it, the way I try to work with it, it's more like a consistent, gentle, consistent pushing at our limit, trying to do a bit better, trying to do a bit better, trying to do a bit better. I have more faith in that than kind of heroic gestures for a few days or a few weeks. I have more faith in that, increasing our skillful efforts a little bit over time, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then eventually wonderful things can be accomplished.